Hello, everybody. This is the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings, where the storm has a name. We are your hosts, Leamon, Jay, and Mark. And today we are going to be talking about the perk category Outsider, or the perk. Yeah, the Outsider Perk Category. That's the way that I wanted to phrase it. Before we do that, we do have one email, and I do encourage anybody who has any questions or comments to email us at torgdcd@gmail.com, and we will read your email as well as answer, if we can, your questions. So the email that we got in was from Padre, and it says, "Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for doing the podcast. I've enjoyed the episodes and always find it very informative. And I do want to thank you for listening to the podcasts. And information is what we try to provide. So to continue, I'm a longtime Torg player and GM, going back to Classic Torg and back to all the Kickstarters. I'm looking forward to the 1.5 update and years 2 through 5. However, this brings me to a question. What elements of the Cassandra files are going to be rolled into 1.5? Specifically, if the spectacular result is going to be added. Are we going to get updated spell, miracle, and psionic powers that add an additional effect for the additional levels of success? Thanks for taking the time to answer. Sincerely, Padre." So what I can say about that is the Cassandra files, if you go to the Torg Eternity FAQ and errata page, there's a PDF that can be downloaded with some alternate rules for Torg Eternity that were being looked at to be a part of the Torg Eternity 1.5. What I can answer for that is we are looking at all of those rules. And your specific question about the spectacular result is the spectacular result will not be a part of 1.5. And I'll explain that just in a little detail. So when the initial thought of spectacular result, I was actually for that. Mainly based off of player calls and stuff being a little bit more difficult in Classic Torg. And with damage, it would be quite easy to just add a bonus die of damage for that result. But this is one of those cases where theory and reality kind of butt heads. And in actual gameplay, the spectacular result was heavily skewed towards away from threats and for Storm Knights. Storm Knights with many more types of resources were able to easily get off spectacular results, and it was much more difficult for villains and other threats. So because of that kind of imbalance of it is one of the reasons that we are not including the spectacular result. Having said that, if that is something that you like, and as a game master you want to go through spells and miracles and psychic powers, etc., and figure out a spectacular result, go for it, and maybe even put it out on the Infiniverse Exchange. But officially, we are not doing the spectacular result. And I know, Jay, you earlier said that you had specifically playtested spectacular results. So did you have any additional things to add to it?
Yeah, I ran a bunch of the Cassandra files for a lot of my organized play games that I ran. And I found that the big issue is, like, a lot of the spells, as you mentioned in the original email, don't have spectaculars. So it really also directly helped damage spells, but really nothing else. And attacks. So there was no real spectacular interaction attacks. I did actually kind of like the way that some of the players' call things got changed, but there was a lot of neat stuff in the Cassandra files, but I don't think spectacular really worked the way it was envisioned, and just ended up being too much damage, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mark, did you have any
So I loved the idea of spectacular results because I do not like the way that player's call has been implemented in Torg Eternity, just lumped in with outstanding. A classic Torg, I think, had a much better mechanic for player's call, and so when the Cassandra files came out with this idea of, oh, we've got this spectacular. I love the idea of decoupling that from the outstanding result, but as you and Jay have pointed out, what looks good up front in implementation kind of falls apart because there's just nothing there other than the melee and fire combat damage dealers getting extra bonus dice that really does much as far as what a spectacular result would be. So I think there's a great opportunity for an author out there that says, I love this. I think that this ought to be a thing, to go through the books and come up with, what are the spectacular and players call, or what's the spectacular level results for all these spells and all these other things, and throw them out there. I think with your statement that it's much easier for the players, I think that holds true at an alpha and maybe an early beta level. But once you step into beta and you start the GM starts to get those possibilities for beta Storm Knights, and you have a pool of possibilities, I think that becomes a much more viable option for the threats to be able to get into the spectacular results. But you're putting another layer of work on the GM because, as Jay pointed out, there just isn't anything out there for the spells, right? And so why do I want to cast this? If it's not a damage dealing spell or it's not an interact, why do I want to do this thing and then lump a possibility on it to get to a spectacular result if I don't have any effects that I can implement? So yeah, niche opportunity. Knock yourself out. Somebody who's listening, go make it, put it out there. We'll download it and use it.
So that basically, I guess, hopefully covers your question. It won't be in Torg Eternity 1.5, but I think all three of us kind of liked it in theory. And if you or somebody wishes to make a Infiniverse Exchange product for that, I think there would be some people biting for it, because especially if you can work it out. So thank you very much, Padre, for the email. And again, for anybody listening, you can email us at torgdcd@gmail.com, and we will read and answer emails. So let's move on to the Outsider Perk Category. So the Outsider Perk Category is an Isle category that is most of it is, in a lot of the stories and stuff, are light versus dark. The Outsiders are sort of a gray area. You cannot have light perks, you cannot have dark perks, and it's just that middle ground. It deals a lot with the Isle Vikings, which are fantasy Vikings, not historical Vikings.
They have horns on their helmets.
Yes, they're the fantasy horned helmet Vikings, wings and stuff like that, not the Norse Vikings from history. So let's just go down. I will state, so in case I forget later, all of these are alpha, so none of them have a beta requirement. And the first one is Berserk, and this is from the core rules. So the prerequisite for this is Isle, and you need a spirit of 8 or more. And it says some warriors become so enraged in the heat of combat that they often become a danger to their own allies and a cyclone of death to their foes. When a berserker suffers a wound, she automatically becomes enraged. She charges the nearest enemy regardless of danger and engages hand-to-hand combat. For the rest of the encounter, the warrior adds her wound penalties to her melee weapons or unarmed combat damage. If she takes shock in excess of her limit, she doesn't fall immediately, but instead makes a spirit roll at the start of each turn thereafter. If the test fails, she's KO'd as normal. If the test succeeds, she fights on, rolling again at the start of each turn. A berserker can stop testing spirit if shock is restored. A berserker is dangerous to her own, however, if she rolls a mishap on the melee weapons or unarmed combat test, and the game master decides it's possible. She hits an ally for her normal damage plus 1 BD. The game master can choose the target that makes the most sense or select one randomly if the situation is unclear. So, Jay, what are your thoughts about Berserk?
It's a pretty thematic perk. I mean, it's the classic berserker trope, right? So if you want to make a all out like axe, swinging machine, this is the way to do it. I think that the interesting thing is I believe you do still have to be suffering wound penalties to actually do the damage. So if you have a perk or cybernetics or a miracle cast on you that lets you ignore your wound penalties, I believe you then wouldn't get the extra damage, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You can't be cheesing it. You gotta really risk it.
Yeah, the language there
it's a bit dangerous.
Would be the saying penalties. You add your penalties. So if you don't have penalties, right. If you have a wound without penalties, you don't have penalties.
And what are the odds you're going to mishap?
Yeah.
I mean,
that never happens, right?
This is a pretty good one for running in there. And I mean, if you really want to, you could always use a melee weapon that's above your axiom. So if you do mishap, then it never happens. So you don't hit your allies. Right?
No, see, I'm calling BS on that. No. That talk about cheese.
But yeah, I think it's a really good one. And it's like basically the core of an entire character concept right there.
Mark, your thoughts on Berserk.
So before we get into my thoughts on Berserk, I flat out I'm pointing over this way because on my screen that's where Jay is. There's no way I'm letting that fly. If you are using if you've got this perk going at my table and you're swinging, let's say you're a dwarf and you pick up what's the power hammer from
Impact Hammer
from Darkhold above your and you're swinging that chunk and you disconnect, you are going to go hit someone first and do your damage and disconnect after the damage, because I'm not going to say the bad words, but it's the stuff that comes out of the south end of a northbound cow, okay, or bull. So that's Leamon, you can call it what you want, but I'm not letting somebody get away with that. That's like, oh, I'm disconnected, I can't do any damage. Berserker's cool. I haven't seen it very much, purely because players seem to be wound averse. I've seen some players who have figured out how to get around that from a mental standpoint, to where, oh no, pile it on, let's go. The challenge with Berserker I see is that, yeah, you want to take those wounds because it ups your damage, but it's a risk, right? So you get to that 3, you got your wound penalties, or 2, you got your wound penalties, and I'm doing more damage, but you got 2 wounds, and healing of wounds is not that easy. So if you're rolling with a group, nobody has heal, or you've got that, you don't have a beacon of light that can do, or whatever it is. I can't remember which one it is.
Yeah.
I'm in Isle and I should know because it's Isle. The one where I can heal you every anytime I want.
Yeah.
Beacon. If you don't have that, then you got to figure out how you're going to.
Oh no, sorry. Born to Light.
Born to Light. There we go. Yeah. What are you going to do about wounds? Other than that, yeah, it's cool. We were talking off air before we started this. I got a melee striker that Deathclaw. I'm like, maybe I should take Outsider and go Berserk. That would be kind of fun. I don't know. We'll see.
So I will say that I like this perk. When Torg Eternity first came out, I had just started a classic Torg game, and we almost immediately converted characters, and one of the characters was a barbarian from the, like I said, the classic Torg template that we used. And he had Relentless, he got Berserk, and he got the whichever one it is that gives you that extra wound. And that group actually did not have a healer in it. And it was, but they did have some slap patches and
Hard
healing.
to kill.
Hard to kill, that's it. And they had some other means to help with wounds, but he constantly was pushing that threshold of, am I going to die or am I not going to die? Or somebody was like, hey, do you need a slap patch? And he's like, no, not yet. The character did end up dying. I will say at some point the character did die, probably because of that, but it was a core part of the character. And I actually do not remember that character mishapping. So that was probably just complete luck, because it seems to happen regularly when we play on the stream. But yeah, this is a good, like Jay said, this is if you want to have that character concept of a barbarian, a berserker type character, this is what you would build around. So having said that, let's move on to the next one, which is Blood Rage, which is the prerequisite of Isle and Berserk. So this is the next step in the perk tree, if you want to call it that. And it says a Berserker that can go into Blood Rage is a terrifying sight, while Berserk, and that means while you're in having that wound penalty and doing that other perk, the warrior gains +2 to damage to melee weapons or unarmed attacks for each wound instead of +1. And I will just say, when Isle came out and that player was able to choose this for his character at that time, another character had martyred themselves and was a healer. They had a healer in the party, and he wanted to be at 3 wounds constantly, because that's +6 damage, and that is pretty good. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on Blood Rage?
Yeah, I mean, +6 damage is no joke. There's a lot of really high toughness enemies, and in Isle already, melee Isle is one of the best ways to get a high damage character, it seems to me. If you get a big magic weapon, you can be pumping out a lot, especially if you're like a dwarf or something with a higher strength to begin with. So you can get to crazy numbers, which would normally require like core earth heavy weapons to achieve otherwise. But it's the same situation as with Berserk. It is a trade-off. And I guess the big thing to remember is not only are those wound penalties going to be on your attacks and everything, but most importantly on your soak rolls. Mm-hmm. And that is when you cannot afford to fail the soak rolls. So it's dangerous. But I mean, if you're already going to go Berserker, I don't see why you would not take this. Like, that can almost just be your starting 2 perks right there. Boom. Because it's, it's not beta or anything.
Yep. Mark, your thoughts on Blood Rage?
I want to step back to Berserk sure. For a second, because there's a piece of verbiage in there, and I'd like to clarify it or discuss it for clarification, because it says, where is it? Damage. That's just huge. The test. See, final roll again. Doggone it. Where is it? Okay, here it is. It's in the last paragraph. This is if she does a mishap. She hits an ally for her normal damage +1 bonus die. So does that mean it's just like, if I'm doing 16 base damage 16, and am I doing base damage plus that 1 bonus die, or am I going to figure out what my hit did as damage to this person, which could be, if it's outstanding, 16 + 2 bonus dice, which is normal damage, because that's what my hit did to that person normally, and then I add a bonus die to it?
No,
this would just the base 16 plus
this
1
is
bonus
an
die.
Automatic hit. That is, it would be kind of maybe considered a good hit. You just automatically hit that person and do damage plus.
There we go.
the bonus die. Yep.
It says normal, and so I get you rolled a 1, so you're not re-rolling an attack. You're just taking that mishap and saying your mishap is whatever your base damage is plus a bonus die, as if it were a good hit on this person.
Right, and it's not a good in case somebody has something of a I don't have good things affect me, or I reduce success levels. It's just a if
base
you
damage plus 1
mishappen,
BD.
no more rolls are made. You hit an ally, you do base damage plus the bonus die. They would still subtract armor, those type of things, but it's not a roll for a hit.
It's just that ambiguous normal damage statement kind of. I was like, that sounds like that might need a look. So Blood Rage, I love this idea, but it's got the same problem. It just elevates the risk that Berserk does. And, I want to be at 3 wounds. Absolutely, I want to be at 3 wounds. I don't want to take anything else, but I want to be at 3 wounds. And as Jay pointed out, now I'm testing for defeat because something bad happened. I got caught in a large blast or dragon breathe fire or whatever, and I take another wound. I'm in trouble. And you're probably low on possibilities too, because you've still got those wound penalties that you're taking, and those are going to be on your attack rolls. And if you're going to step up and take 3 wounds to do 6 points of damage, by golly, you want to make sure you hit something. And if you roll low, you're going to throw a possibility on that thing. And if you suddenly drain your possibilities down to 1 because you're like, I got to soak, and then you crap out a 1 or you fail to soak, and you take that, and now you're testing for defeat with no possibilities. That could be a bad day because you test lower of spirit or strength, right? I could absolutely see taking. We talked about this in one of the other podcasts about the prowess. Or is it the prowess perk that lets you test for strength always for defeat? Which one is that? You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's 2 of them.
There's 2, one for each one. Yeah.
I could totally see a berserker taking that feat because if I'm going to be a melee striker, I'm going to have a strong strength. I'm going to be strong in strength. This is an edge case where that perk absolutely pays off, because if I'm going to spend all my possibilities, make sure I'm hitting you doing that plus 6 damage. Because if I've got 16 or 17, I'm swinging something heavy and I'm hitting my Adinos Chosen of Lanala guy. He had a 17 with magic on his death claw and all that stuff and stacking all this stuff up. And I get to put plus 6 on that, 23. I'm a legitimate threat to a dragon at that point, unarmed. How cool is that? I mean, you guys know what's Mark prerequisite? What's my requisition if we're going into dragon territory or T-Rex territory?
The same as everybody's.
Mark wants law rockets, right? Why do we want law rockets? Because they do 25 damage out of the gate. You get this perk rolling, you're in that territory, and you're just running with your hands. That is so cool. It's also stupid risky.
Well, another way to look at Blood Rage is if you want to be a more conservative berserker.
Wait, what?
is that you can maintain 1 wound for the same level of effectiveness as you previously maintained 2 wounds. Right, so
it's efficient. It's more efficient.
Above 3 wounds. So.
Right, so if you're just a nice, chill, mellow 1 wound all the time, just enough to have the edge taken off. It's plus 2 damage. It's still nothing to sneeze at. And then if worse comes to worse, you can probably engineer yourself getting more wounded if you need to. So if you don't want to commit to the 3 wounds, you can still.
That's probably a good point, because at 2 wounds, you're a point better than Berserker is, right? Because Berserker, if you walk the line with Berserker, you're at 3 wounds, right? Yeah. Well, for 2 wounds, you go to 4 points bonus, which is 1 better than Berserker could get, and you've got a wound to play with.
Yeah, a buffer.
Yeah.
I'll just add for the Berserker plus Blood Rage combination, the player that I had with the Barbarian, he had his strength and spirit were his 2 big ones, so they were pretty much equal. And there were many times where that previous Berserk ability, where you don't fall unconscious by making spirit rolls, came into effect, where he stayed conscious for a few rounds until shock could be healed or the enemy could be defeated. And that helped out a lot by him having an equal strength and spirit, and it gave him more shock to continue. So that was
Guess you could wear the
choice he
most
made.
fatiguing armor possible then.
I'd be buying healing potions every single time I rolled up into Isle for that character, though, or slap patches every time I go to Thargold, without question.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is from the Isle source book, which is Ice Blessed. The prerequisite is Isle, and it says a bluish hue to the skin is a sign that the character is permanently touched by the cold. He doesn't suffer ill effects from freezing weather or exposure, and survival is favored in cold climates. In addition, he gains +6 toughness against effects based on cold or ice. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on Ice Blessed?
This is extremely niche perk, so it really depends on your campaign. If you're going to be an Isle in Thargold all the time, it's probably fine, for you. I would probably, as a GM, slightly reinterpret the whole favored in cold climates to be favored against cold, not necessarily to, I don't know, maybe I could see it going either way, but like, would it help you with navigation or hunting, like getting food? Maybe it would, I guess, because you're used to cold climates. But then again, are Thargold and Isle, but that's an even bigger question, so never mind. Okay. The other thing I can think of is where this might be useful is if you have a mage in your party who's a big fan of Hailstorm and the other one, Icy Burst.
Icy Blast.
Icy Blast. But because Hailstorm got a lot of use from my group all the time. It's very good for stopping foes in their tracks. And as a big blast, if you have, say, a big old berserker right in the midst of all of it, they will get hit by it. So +6 toughness against friendly fire that you're expecting is good. And then if you're getting friendly fire from that, they can't blame you if you accidentally hit them with the mishap with the berserk. So it all works out.
Right back at you, pal.
Yeah.
Oh!
So,
That's
Mark,
funny.
your thoughts on Ice Blessed?
I like Jay's approach to backing the verbiage out of cold climates and just favoriting stuff that deals with cold, because it is a very niche ability, and you got to kind of give it a little bit more playability. Ice Burst, I was hunting it. Ice Burst. I like the favored to cold. That way, if you come up with something that, say you're in Aurorsh and you're researching the Nightmare's secret, and it has to do with cold, and nobody knows that, right? But your whoever is Ice Blessed happens to have Scholar, the GM can look at that person and say, something about this really, you're drawn to this and you can't figure out what. Give me a Scholar roll, but use your give me a Scholar roll, and you can be favored on this, and you don't tell them why. They don't really know. You just give them the Benny, and then they blow it out of the water, they make it or whatever. You say, well, this has to do with being in an ice, whatever, blah blah blah, and the secret this, and then it makes sense, right? And so I like the idea of broadening that a little bit, because it is somewhat niche. But if you're building a character that's, let's say you're building a Nile Empire cold based character, and after beta you take the outsider access to the outsider class, you can go with Ice Blessed, and then that folds into who that character is, something along those lines. Other than that, it's got kind of limited it's nice because it's favored +6 toughness in the right circumstances.
Yeah, that would be my thoughts, is depending on your group, where you're adventuring, etc., this could be very helpful. Or if you're in Living Land or Nile Empire, then maybe not as useful.
It's a lot of guys with freeze rays.
Yeah, true. But it does fit. I really like Jay your thought on the helping against friendly fire, or maybe, hey, hit me, I'll take a wound instead of 3, then I'm berserking, blood raging, and ice blast. Okay, so let's move to magic resistance. So prerequisite is Isle, and it says the character may not have the spellcaster perk. Though many outsiders embrace and use magic themselves, some reject it and eventually become resistant, sorry. Magical spells suffer a -2 penalty when cast against the character with magic resistant. This includes friendly spells as well. Miracles and psionic powers are unaffected by this perk. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on magic resistance?
Well, one of my first things is I would probably update that to include any perk that gives you access to a school of magic, not just the spellcaster perk specifically. So you can't take this and Dabbler, or something like that, right? Yeah, it's a nice start. -2 isn't really a ton, but it might be enough. If it was like against miracle, like usually spells, it might be harder to buff you, but they're not usually healing you, so it's usually a bit safer to have friendly spells not affect you as easily. I think it works well for some ideas like dwarves again. Yeah, I don't remember if this actually leads anywhere in a chain or anything, but it seems like it should. But yeah, it's okay. But it depends again on your campaign, because there are numerous realms that you'll travel to where there will be no magic cast at you, and thus it is actually only making your own life harder if you have a mage in your group. That said, if you're again going to be jumping into ice storms, this again would help with that. But yeah, it's pretty niche as well, I would say.
Mark.
As a perk, I don't like it at all. It seems like I'm spending a lot of XP. I don't care what level. First perk, 5 XP. All I get's a -2 against magic only, and that's it. And that's good and bad. So when somebody wants to buff me, it's harder for them to do, which reduces, a lot of those buffs are levels of success bump you up, but by a point or lengths of time. And now that's harder. And sometimes my magic resistance is going to cause them to not buff me so good. Why would I put this on my character? Now, I would see this as an interesting, maybe magic item, Ring of, and move this as from a perk into an item or an amulet or something like that you can, take off, give to somebody, whatever, and it becomes a little bit more flexible to me. But as a perk that I would build, I don't know that I would ever build it unless I had a character concept that I was going to RP and it fit really well into their backstory. Other than that, or as Jay said, if it's you got to take this to get to something else. Now I can see it, because it's like, why do I want this? Oh, because I get this cool thing over here. It's not really that good, but I got to take it to get over there, because the path that it opens up for me makes a lot of sense when I get to beta and high beta, and I start having this tree of abilities that are built on the fact that I suck at magic. Okay, now I'm with it, but it's just a perk by itself, and I'm not taking it.
Yeah, I kind of see this as niche as well as character concept of what the reason you're making a character, that it could work, but I just think that there's probably better perks out there to get for helping against spells and other things. So let's move on to Seeker. Seeker just has a prerequisite.
Oh yeah,
Called?
okay. No, yeah, but it should be Seeker. They're out of order in the book.
Yeah. Alphabetizing being a thing, sure.
Seeker prerequisite is Isle. Seekers are special outsiders with a strange connection to the underground. Seekers always have the sense of direction without sky or landmarks, and survival tests underground are favored. When a seeker desires something enough, she feels pulled towards tunnels and paths that will bring her to it eventually. It usually takes an hour of concentration to feel the beginning of the route more if the seeker's desire isn't strong or what's sought after is distant. The path isn't guaranteed to be safe or even certain to lead to what the seeker intends, just something the seeker somehow desire. And it says this perk leads to Glint Seeker and
No, that's
Pathfinder, but that's from
those
other...
are Infiniverse things. Yeah.
Yes. So I'll just mention that, you know, we do every once in a while talk about Infiniverse Exchange. So this officially doesn't lead elsewhere, but unofficial, there are products out there that this is a base. So hey, if you want to do one for the magic resistance and start a tree for that,
There you go.
for it.
Yeah.
And this one is from Isle Sourcebook. So Jay, your thoughts on Seeker?
It's very vague. As to what I personally treat Seeker almost as an NPC perk. I've had Seekers be NPCs that the players have needed to find, escort, protect, because it seems like such a very limited rule otherwise. The underground is everywhere, right? Like that is one of the big things about Torg Eternity, is that all of the realms are connected via the underground in some manner, but primarily Isle and the Living Land, it seems. So it could pop up anywhere and you can use it to navigate. But one of the biggest issues, I think, is that a lot of GMs, and especially adventurers, treat traveling through the underground to get somewhere as just like hand-waved time. Like it's not like an old AD&D adventure where we're going through this hex, by God, and we're gonna see what random encounters there are. And you know, and the journey is actually part of it, right? A lot of the adventures are more like, okay, well, that's not what we really care about. We're going to the action. So by the time the adventure starts, you've already bypassed the part where you would get the favored. But if your adventure, like if your campaign is in Isle and you are going to be in the underground a lot, and I don't necessarily think, let me just double check. Yeah, it doesn't have to be the capital U underground. It's anytime you're underground. So depending on what kind of crazy tombs you're looking at in the Nile Empire, bunkers and Tharkle, whatever, right? There could be a bunch of underground places. But again, will you need to actually use a survival to navigate those is the question. Probably not. But I do find that the little thing, like I said at the very beginning of this, it's vague. So it's kind of up to the GM, but you know, you're supposed to add something to it. And I kind of treat that as Gandalf in the Fellowship of the Ring, you know, when they're in Moria, and he's just sort of like, I don't know which way to go. And it's like, has to stop and think about it, feel the vibes, and yeah, okay, we're going this way. And so that does give the GM an opportunity to provide like an extra encounter or maybe some treasure. Being Isle, there might be a magic item that way or something. A good way to explain some of the Cosm cards that have been played. But it seems a lot to ask for a player to spend XP to do that when you could have just done it anyways, in my opinion.
Mark, your thoughts on Seeker?
So I'm on the other side of this one from Jay. I like it. I like it a lot, but I like it as long as the GM interprets it the same way that I interpret it, which doesn't always happen. From the standpoint of organized play, I'm with Jay on the fact that this is a lot of times, and a lot of the canned or the written stuff that's published, the underground, land between, land below, is a conduit to get from point A to point B to explain, well, how do we on foot cover 1,000 miles? Oh, we go down underground, we come over this way, we go do this thing, we hit one combat, and then we pop up over here 2 hours later. How does that happen? Magic, right? It's the land below or it's the land between, whichever one happens to be, or both.
The underground.
or the underground. What I like about it, and the reason that the only thing that I would change on it is in the towards the end, the path isn't guaranteed to be safe or even certain to lead to what the sea. That last bit on the second half of that last sentence, or even certain to lead to what the seeker intends. That's the point of the perk. Yes, this does lead to what the seeker intends. That's the point of taking the perk. And so I'm going to ignore that part. And if you take this perk and it's a home game, I think you've just given the GM license to create a side quest. And the seeker, if the player character has this perk as a seeker perk, then you as you concentrate on the thing that we've taken this mission to find the MacGuffin, and we know what it is, we just don't know where it is, and we'd like to find it. And so now you have taken on the risk of going underground in whatever cosm you're in, because to me, the land below and the land between permeate all of the cosms. And if you go underground somewhere, you could end up somewhere else through one of those two conduits. And the fact that you have an Eilish seeker in your group, someone who has taken this perk, spent XP to get this perk, tells me that they intuitively know how to connect to the land between wherever they are. Once they get underground, the reality has bent in such a way that they know, if we go this way, we're going to get to an entry point to the land between, so that I can get to where I want to go. And that's part of what I do, because I'm a seeker, right? And so, is it going to be safe? Or is it going to be 2 hours later? No, probably not, unless the story says that it has to be. But to me, that's the point of this perk, is that I can get you there. You may have to expend resources. We were going to buy it, we were going to have to get on a plane, or we're going to have to steal a car, or we were going to have to hijack a train, or sneak onto some kind of truck to go overland, or whatever. We were going to have to do something to go from where we were to where we want to be. Well, okay. Now we have a story reason to do it, and it's kind of cool, because somebody gets to do the thing that they're designed to do. So I'm fine with it being a player perk. It just has to be interpreted. The GM has to interpret it the way I do, which is, if you tell me I want to go find the MacGuffin, right? We're going to find the MacGuffin, the golden glass of goblet ice water, whatever it is. And I sit down and I concentrate on that. I've read a tome. My mage has brought me a book that says this is what you're looking for and described it. And I spend some time trying to figure that out, because we as a group have taken that on as a mission. Okay, in an hour, I got a good idea. Okay, you know what? We're going to wander. And this is the Gandalf thing. We're going to, it's over this way. And we're going to wander that way. No idea what's over there. But why are we going into the swamp? Well, because the seeker says that's the direction we got to go. Well, how long are we going there? I don't know. Ask Joran. Joran, how long are we going to take? Take for what? I don't know. So it's you've given the GM license to do things to the party.
Okay, so my thoughts on Seeker, the like second sentence, Seekers always have a sense of direction without sky or landmarks, and survival tests underground are favored. That is something that I would just like to give dwarfs. Because
I like that. Let's do that. Yes.
It fits a lot of fantasy tropes about dwarfs, that they don't get lost if their feet are on the ground, that type of thing. So when I first saw this, I actually thought it was a dwarf perk and not open to everybody. The second part of it is one thing that you'll have to, I think, figure out with your group. If you're going through, as Mark said, pre-written adventures, including the official adventures, and the game master doesn't have a lot of time, or the group doesn't want to go on a lot of side quests, this wouldn't necessarily be a good thing. If you have a more free-flowing table house game that isn't dependent on published materials, I think this could be really cool. And I'll be contrary to Mark. I would every once in a while probably throw in something where, like, if we go along with the dwarf stereotypes, if I have a dwarf and he's always talking about gold and silver and stuff, and the party's like, hey, we need to get to this place. Well, his desire is probably going to lead them to an abandoned mine with, filled with crazy stuff, but with a treasure, that will be a side path to get wherever the party actually wants to go. So, it's that what do you intend versus what you desire, and maybe even have some roles versus some mind or something to get you back on track. So
It'd
I
be a
see
good mishap result.
Mm-hmm. But this is something that I really I see is could be very cool in a role playing sense with a more open sandboxy type game rather than just we're doing scene one and then we're doing scene two, we're completing the act, we're going to the next act, because some players might see this as either completely skipping material that they wanted to go through or leading to side quests when they just want to get through the adventure. So kind of look at yourself, look at your group, what is the game you want to play, and that's how I would see Seeker. So we can move on to the last one in the list, which is Scald. And this is from Isle also. Prerequisite of Isle, charisma of 8 or higher, and 2 or more adds in Scholar. And again, for Infiniverse Exchange, this perk leads to the Storyteller Musician perk.
There's a whole minstrel Infiniverse Exchange book.
Yeah, Strike a Chord is where that one it looks like it goes to. So, this perk is Viking Skulls recite battle poems and historical precedents at the top of their lungs during battle to inspire their allies. While in combat, use an action to make a challenging, a difficulty number of 12 scholar test. On a success, look at the next 3 drama cards and then place them back on the deck in the same order. On a good success, look at the 3 and then replace them in any order. And on an outstanding success, look at the 3, discard 1, and place the other 2 back on the deck in any order. So, Jay, your thoughts on Scald?
So some of the other Outsider perks have been vague or very niche. This is not. This is very direct in what it does, and it's like one of the few perks that single-handedly carries charisma through the game, because you do need to have a charisma of 8 in it, but it is a scholar test, so that's mine. But this anything that lets people muck with the drama deck is very, very powerful, and I've seen this used a bunch, and even on a standard success, it's still useful. You want to pop this off first, if at least you know something bad's coming, so someone can pool a seize the initiative if they need to. But obviously, good or outstanding is much better. Lets you get rid of those 40s. It's very good. If as long as you are fine with playing a support class, because oftentimes you're not going to be doing much else during the combat, because you're going to want to get this off early and you don't want to have too many negatives, so you don't want to multitask usually. But it's very good. It's very good for the group dynamic. But there is one thing about it which I think needs to really be brought to everyone's attention, and that is the whole at the top of their lungs thing. So you can't really use it for a dramatic skill resolution that involves sneaking in to a fortress or something like that.
Well, you could, but I mean,
I guess you could. It just like failed the round, I guess.
Or you put
depends what the test is at that point, I suppose.
Maybe you put limiters on it. Depending on how well you succeed, you get -2, -4, -6 that based on the levels of success. Because you did a really good job of screaming at the top of your lungs about how this relates to that historical battle where King Joran did this thing that completely routed the attacking Viking berserkers, blah 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 blah, and oh yeah, we're supposed to be sneaking. Sorry.
I think the guards were like, "Do you hear someone singing about that famous ballad?"
That's right. I love that song. Who is that? No, this is this is a fantastic perk. I like this perk a lot. And as Jay said, it's a 100% your reason for charisma to exist. It's if you're not involved in the stealth DSR, it's the I win the DSR or it's we win the DSR perk if you can pull it off, because you get to look at the 3 cards and go, oh, okay, that has an A and that has a B and that has a C, and let's put that back that way because I got an outstanding. Oh, and you know what? That one doesn't have anything and it's going to put us in a setback. Let's disc that one out, not get that one. So the guys that manipulate the drama deck in combat are very annoying. And to GMs who are like, well, we have this really cool DSR we could do here. Round 1, A, B, C, D. Somebody blows the combined check out of the water. We never get to do anything cool. And it's just like, well, okay. Scald can make that happen for you.
But to the players, seeing that dejected look on the GM's face is all they need.
That's correct.
That makes it worth the XP right there.
That's right. It does. And it happens every time too. It does, because they're like, fine, okay, yeah, you got an A and a B. Wait, you're gonna flurry to get the C? Okay, fine.
Yeah, I like this perk. Not just what it does, because it is a pretty potent perk. There's a couple of other perks and or mystic abilities out there that do similar or the same thing, but this would allow a character, as Jay said, with charisma to have something extremely potent for the group. And I like that it's not necessarily a psionic power or miracle or spell, that you could go as a charismatic yeller battle poem reciter in the middle of battle and doing this cool thing while looking like a berserker or something, or seeming that way when you're actually manipulating reality, manipulating the drama deck. So I like that background that it gives to a player that wants to have something that could manipulate the drama deck and doesn't want to go a mystical path to do it. So those,
and the numbers are very achievable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even with it starting out as a 12, it's not starting out as a 14 or anything.
Well, what's the one that's like 16 is where it starts, and it's ridiculously difficult. I can't remember which one. I don't have characters that do that, but yeah, there's one of them that's stupid hard. One of them's real easy and one of them's real hard, and I don't remember which one is which. It's like psionic versus miracle, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but all in all, as Jay said, very, very definite. These are the rules for this perk. No wishy-washiness, but I think it could give a really cool background to somebody, or a way to do the same thing as somebody else without going in a mystical direction. So, having said that, that is all the Outsider perks. One of the lesser used Isle perks, because a lot of people like going light or dabbling in the darkness perks, and this one is that middle ground perk category. Once again, we do thank you for listening and or watching us, depending on where you get this content. Email us at torgdcd@gmail.com. We will read your emails. We'll answer questions that you have. And other than that, we hope you have fun in your own Cosmverse. Bye, everybody.